afternoon, good evening, depending on what time of the day you are watching this episode of Data-Driven Formula One. My name is Patrick Henz. Normally, Gana Bogreva and we are doing this jointly. So sometimes I'm doing these solo episodes, normally focusing on topics, on smaller topics where we dig a little bit deeper. So you may say a little bit more the nerd topics. And today, as you see, it's a quite dark day outside the house. So what is better than having a nice glass of scotch and enjoying another episode? Well, unfortunately, just water, but scotch it is related to content because we are speaking about the Rob Walker Racing team, or Rob Walker Racing, Rob Walker as a person. And as you may assume from the name, yes, he's a heir of the famous Johnnie Walker family. So that's today's topic. Right at the beginning, again, unfortunately, a trigger warning. We will speak also about fatal accidents. If this is not a topic which you want to be involved with today, please skip this episode, see an earlier or the next episode, or watch this episode when you feel okay with this topic. I think it's, again, a quite fascinating episode, which we created for you. But again, if fatal accidents is nothing you want to hear about today, this is not your episode. Rob Walker Racing. The team became the most successful privateer in Formula One history by achieving something rare. They won a Formula One Grand Prix in the World Championship without ever building their own car. And honestly, this is not completely correct. It's not false, but it's slightly right. And I will explain you why. But let's say they never raced their own car. Besides in Formula One, the team participated in Formula 2, Formula 3, sports cars, and hill climbing, what was quite famous in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s in Europe. On the photo, you see already the Lotus 18, which Stirling Moss won the Monaco Grand Prix in 1961. And this is the typical Rob Walker livery, dark blue, related to the Scottish heritage, with a single white stripe. So this is really the winning car Stirling Moss drove 1961. We will discuss various chapters in today's episode. Chapter 1, Rob Walker. I must say, we didn't found photos where we have the rights to show you. There are only very few images which you may find in the internet, and all of them have copyright. So I decided here to teach the algorithm, the AI, how he looked like, and this to create an image which I can show you here. So this image is AI created, but it gives you, I think, a good idea how he looked like. Robert Ramsay Campbell Walker, born on the 14th of August of 1917, had been heir of the famous Johnnie Walker company. In the age of 3, he inherited a fortune. His fascinating for motorsport started with 7 years, as he saw his first motor race in France, where his stepfather brought him to. Then later, with 11 years, he received his first car, a 1924 Morris Coupe, and with 21 years, he already owned 21 cars. So this gives you a good insight what it means to be the hero of the Johnnie Walker family. 20 years, 21 cars. In 1938, he acquired his first race car, a Delahaye Type 35. With this, he started his racing career at local events. 1 year later, he entered with his car at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. According to the legend, he received a glass of champagne at one of his pit stops. Result, 8th position together with his co-driver Ian Connell. So 1939, Le Mans was in big parts an event for the gentleman drivers. And here, I don't know if it was that common, but not that surprisingly, that at the pit stop, the cars not only get new fuel, new tires, but drivers also get a glass of champagne. In World War II, Walker joined the Royal Navy to become a pilot, but not stayed there for that long. In 1940, he married Betty Duncan and he promised her to give up his racing career. Here we see a similarity to Enzo Ferrari, who also had to promise his wife giving up racing, or let's say driving himself, and to focus on the racing team, the management of the team. So here we have a similarity, Rob Walker, Enzo Ferrari, and their way will crosses later on. In 1947, he acquired Pibroch Garage in Dorking in the UK, and this near to the Brookland racetrack, so this became the base for his racing team. In 1953, he established the Rob Walker Racing Team based in the former garage Dorking, Surrey. Based on his Scottish heritage, and as already shown to you, his race car had been painted in dark blue with a white stripe. Chapter 2, Formula One. Here on the right, you see the 1953, their first Formula One car, a Connaught A. And here we have, and here this car had been equipped with a Lea Francis 2.04-liter engine. Drivers had been Tony Road. And as it was quite common for small teams in the 50s and also later still in the 60s, they not participated the full season, but focused on some key races, mostly their home races. So here the same with Rob Walker Racing. They only participated once that year with Tony Road at the British Grand Prix. Next year, same car, and new driver, John Risley Picard, same here, only participating at the British Grand Prix. 55, now we have the Connaught Type B with a British Alta GP 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine, so an engine based on Formula One regulations. Drivers had been Tony Road and Peter Walker, who does not have family ties with Rob Walker, just similar name. And also, these two only participated at the British Grand Prix. 2 years later, they switched to the quite common Cooper C43, also with the Climax engines, 1.5 and 2.0 four-cylinder engines, one Formula 2 regulations, one Formula 1. Driver had been a young Jack Brabham, and he participated already at 2 events, at the British and later at the German Grand Prix. And this is the first year where we see that Rob Walker had been quite successful identifying talents, because Jack Brabham later would become not only a founder of its own team, but also Formula One champion. Already the next year, he had other famous drivers, Stirling Moss, Maurice Trintignant, Rock Flockford, Wolfgang Seidel, and François Piquet. Maybe they focused on the first 2 drivers, and as it was usual up to today, especially if you're a smaller team, you have one very talented driver, and the other drivers had been pay drivers, helping you to finance the salary of your star driver or the team in general. 1958, the first victory for Rob Walker Racing at the Argentinian Grand Prix. Driver Stirling Moss with the Cooper T43. It was the first victory for a rear engine car and was the start of a general change, as engines, when we started the championship in the 1950s, had been in the front, but at the end of the 50s, this changed, and this 58 victory of the Rob Walker car was the first of a long series. And later in the 60s, it was clear that an successful Formula One car has to have the engine behind the driver. And then we had a second victory for Rob Walker. I mean, directly in the next race in Monaco. Second and last victory for Maurice Trintignant as a driver. And here already with the T45, which you see on the right on top. On bottom, you see the Cooper C43, both cars in the Rob Walker livery, dark blue, like the Scottish flag with the white stripe. Then let's continue. So as already mentioned, 58, they've been using the Cooper C43 T45 with the Climax engines, Stirling Moss, Maurice Trintignant, also Ron Flockhart, Wolfgang Seidel, again, François Piquois. 59, they changed to the newer Cooper T51 with the 2.5-liter Formula One Climax engine. And again, number one driver Stirling Moss and Maurice Trintignant. 1960, Cooper T51 again, but also they started using the Lotus 18, both equipped with Climax engine. Drivers again had been Stirling Moss and Maurice Trintignant. Lotus 18 and 21 had been used for the 1961 season, equipped with Climax engine, Stirling Moss and Jack Femin as driver. On the left, you see the photo, at least if you follow us on YouTube, YouTube Music and Spotify. You see the images. If you are only listening to us on one of the various podcasts platform, you may consider, if you have the opportunity, to look out for our video version where we show you the information, the data, the images, photos, etc. So here on the right, you see Stirling Moss driving his Lotus 18 at the German Grand Prix. And as you've seen here, besides the Lotus, they also used a Ferguson P99, a car which is widely forgotten today. Nevertheless, again, another fascinating story, and we will come to this later. Stirling Moss' victory at Monaco was also the first victory for Lotus in Formula One. So again, a first time with Rob Walker, because only around 1 year later, the Lotus Works team could achieve victory. So here, Rob Walker using Lotus had been 1 year earlier successful than the Lotus Works team. And here you see again the Lotus car in the Rob Walker livery, dark blue, white stripe, as it was used by Stirling Moss, winning the Monaco Grand Prix in 1960. And here we come to the point where I've mentioned there was the small yes but. Led by Alf Francis, the team Walker, the chef mechanic, designer, you may say, the team developed the Walker Special Formula One car. The car you see on the right. So yes, this car really exists, but it was never raced, as unfortunately they identified it as non-competitive. So they had developed this car with the idea to race with the own car as the bigger teams, but unfortunately this was cancelled. And again, we have to see that Rob Walker Racing, even if very successful in the 1950s, 1960s, had been a very small team with a limited budget. So here it was more logical to buy the components, buy the car and buy the engine and race this instead of using big parts of the budget to develop an own car. Also important, 1961, the P99, it was because this was a four-wheel drive Grand Prix car built by Ferguson Research. Rob Walker Racing used the car at the British Grand Prix, so this car was driven even only once. Driver John Fairman, the second one, had to hand it over to Stirling Moss, the number one driver at Rob Walker, as Moss Lotus had technical issues, but due to outside assistance later, the car had been disqualified. This was still quite common, 1950s, 1960s. that you had the number one driver, and if he had technical issues, he came to the pits, and the team asked also the number two, number three, number four driver to the pits to hand over the car so that the number one driver could continue racing, competing, and maybe getting important points. Later, Stirling Moss won the non-official Formula One Grand Prix at Oulton Park with the Ferguson P99. And this, until today, is the only Formula One race won by a four-wheel drive car. So again, another first time, and this time also an only time for Rob Walker, because this was really quite a story, winning, even if only a non-official Formula One Grand Prix with a four-wheel drive car, a development which, for whatever reason, mostly because of weight, fuel usage, etc., was not continued in Formula One. Then let's see how the story continued at Formula One. 1962, Rob Walker continued with Lotus 24, using Climax engine, only driver Maurice Trentino. 63, Cooper T60 and T66, again Climax engine, and Joachim Bonnier as driver. Then we have 64, Cooper T66, and also they started to use the car designed by the Brabham team, the BT7 and the BT11, together with a BRM engine. Drivers Edgar Bars, Joachim Bonnier, Jochen Rindt, Geki, Joe Siffert, and Hab Sharp. So a big rotation inside the team. When you see something like this is normally an indicator that the team was lacking budget, so looking for a new pay driver every race. 65, continuing with the Brabham cars, BT7, BT11, Climax and BRM engine, two drivers, Joachim Bonnier, Joe Siffert, two very talented drivers. 66, Brabham BT11 and the Cooper T81, BRM, and Maserati 3.0 V12 engine. A little bit a plan of Maserati to return to Formula One after they left with their cars. So maybe at that time, Maserati was considering to return just as an engine developer. So next year in 67, Rob Walker participated with the Cooper T81 car powered by this Maserati 3.0 V12 engine. Not that successful, but nevertheless, they continued in the beginning of 68 before they not returned, but switched to the Ford Cosworth, which would then become the dominating engine for a long, long time in Formula One. Chapter 3, Mike Hawthorn. Mike Hawthorn won the 58 Formula One Drivers' Championship with only 1 point advantage to the Rob Walker driver Stirling Moss. Stirling Moss switched after one race, after the first race for one wall, meaning he only drove once for Rob Walker and then went to the All-British Vanwell team. On the right, you see Mike Hawthorn, and in this year, 58, he became champion with Ferrari, driving the Ferrari 246, still a front engine car. So we're here really at the end of the 50s. After this success, Hawthorn directly retired. The death of his friend and fellow Ferrari driver Peter Collins deeply impacted him, and his personal health became worse than he wanted others to see. So you have here the both factors which led to his retirement. In January 1959, he was driving his Jaguar 3.4 MK1 on public roads in the UK, near Onslow Village in England. Besides him, Rob Walker in a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, so the famous Gullwing. Shortly after Hawthorn passed to Walker's Mercedes, unfortunately, he lost control over his car hit an oncoming truck and then hit a tree. And this called the fatal accident of Mike Hawthorn. Only half a year later, after he won the Formula One championship with Ferrari. Due to missing witness, it could never get clearly confirmed that both had been racing each other at this moment, but a rumor started earlier, especially as Rob Walker did not want to admit to the police at the scene the speed he was going at the point of the accident. Other discussed possibilities include a sudden blackout by Hawthorn caused by his advancing illness. So this is the first time we had Rob Walker at least statistically aligned with a fatal accident. And this is a little bit the dark side of Walker. I mean, and we will come back to this at the end to discuss if this is only a statistical relation, being at the wrong time at the wrong place, or if he somehow caused these accidents. Chapter 4, Stirling Moss. Alfred Ethelbert Moss had been a successful dentist and enthusiastic race car driver. His biggest success had been the fourth place at the 1924 Indianapolis 500. Together with Ken Gregory, he founded in 1958 the British Racing Partnership, BRP, first participating in Formula 2, but 1 year later already entering Formula 1. Even if the team did not have official ties to Ferrari, various of the drivers got seats later at the Scuderia, including Olivier Gendebin, Maston Gregory, and Phil Hill. Even if this privateer team achieved victories, they are not noted in Formula One's history as the first team to change its. Even if they got the victory, they are noted in Formula One's history as the first team to change its identity as part of a sponsoring. So another first time we have in this episode. In the 1960 championship, the team started officially as Yeoman Credit Racing Team, a British bank, which paid BRP to change the name and officially name it Yeoman Credit Racing Team. As this is, of course, again, the first case of development which we have up to today. We also dedicated a special episode only speaking about Yeoman Credit Racing Team. If you're interested here, please scroll down our episode and you will see this episode. Coming back to Stirling Moss, from 1958 to 64, the team used Cooper and Lotus race cars and even developed its own car, the BRP P25. Nevertheless, on one occasion, they tried out a Ferrari 156 at a non-official Formula One race, 1962 at Silverstone. At that time in the 60s, the British Grand Prix always changed 1 year Silverstone, 1 year Brands Hatch, 1 year Silverstone, 1 year Brands Hatch, and so on. So 62, the official British Grand Prix had been in Brands Hatch, and we had only the non-official Formula One race at Silverstone. The driver had been Innes Ireland, but originally it should have been somebody else, none other than the team owner's son, Stirling Moss, who also had been earlier driving for Rob Walker Racing. Only being 20 years old, Enzo Ferrari already spotted Stirling Moss as a high talent and invited him in 1950 for testing to Bari, south of Italy. Stirling Moss remembered this situation. Ferrari called me down to southern Italy to drive the new four-cylinder that had been designed for use in Formula 2. Based on the invitation, Moss came to Bari, but it is unknown what happened in the meantime. If Enzo Ferrari changed his opinion or only forgot to communicate this adequately to the local race engineers. Whatever was the reason, local engineers explained to surprise Moss that there was no testing plan for him, but instead the experienced driver Piero Taruffi was testing the company's new development. At this moment, Moss swore to himself to never drive for Ferrari. But nevertheless, at endurance races, Moss appreciated a Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase prepared by a Rob Walker Racing Team or also the North American Racing Team. In total, he won 13 endurance races with a Ferrari. So you see, in other classes, he drove Ferrari cars, but for Formula One, he never wanted to officially drive for the Scuderia Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari understood Moss' quality and tried to overcome their problems. Again, Moss recalled, Ferrari said to me, if you tell me what car you want, I'll build it for you. I said, I want a Ferrari 250 GTO sports car for BRP, painted in their colors, and I want a Ferrari 156, this is the Formula One car, the shark nose, painted in Rob Walker colors, dark blue, white stripe, then I will race for you. Also considering that the 62 season would require the best driver to defend the Formula One title, Enzo Ferrari agreed to these conditions. For example, Stirling Moss and Graham Hill started 1961 at the 24 Hours of Le Mans for a North American racing team and Rob Walker Racing, so the car which was prepared jointly by the two teams. North American racing team was practically an official works team for Ferrari. So here they invited for the Moss Hill car Rob Walker to join, and that's why you see here the car in dark blue, white stripe. The logo with the Ferrari horse, this is the North American Racing Team badge. It's difficult to see on the photo, but on top of the horse you see the US flag. In the same race, Pedro and Ricardo Rodríguez started directly for NART with a Ferrari 250 TRI, the 61 version, so really the works car, and both cars did not qualify. Why I mention Pedro and Ricardo Rodríguez, we will see later. To keep true to himself, Moss would receive a works Ferrari Formula One race car, but not managed by the Scuderia itself, but a private Rob Walker team. Ferrari delivered both cars, but due to an accident of Moss, he was not able to receive the 156 and even had to finish his Formula One career. Instead of Moss, Innes Island took the red car with the white stripe to Silverstone. The pastel green, the BRP colors, Ferrari 250 GTO was destined to be driven by Stirling Moss at Le Mans. Due to the accident, also this did not happen. Instead, Innes Island and Muston Gregory had the honor to participate at Le Mans with this car. Chapter 5. Ricardo Rodríguez. Ricardo and Pedro Rodríguez are the legendary Mexican race drivers which tragically died in their beloved sport. As homage, the Mexico City racetrack had been renamed to Autodromo Hermanos Rodríguez. Since 1958, Ricardo, the younger of the two brothers, started for the North American racing team, bringing him in contact with the various versions of the Ferrari Testarossa. Finally, in 61, he got the opportunity to drive a couple for Formula One races directly for the Scuderia, same as mentioned before, not driving the whole season, but sometimes invited as an additional driver, including that he became at Monza the youngest driver to start from the front row in Formula One. As the 1962 Formula One championship was not doing good for Ferrari, the team lost early the opportunity to defend the constructors or drivers' titles. To save money, the team was not going to the last overseas races to the US and South America. This meant also that the drivers had no opportunity to participate before that at the Mexican Grand Prix, which was not part of the official championship agenda. So we had in 62 a Formula One race in Mexico City, but not being part of the official Formula One agenda. And this was quite common, 50s, 60s. We had a higher number of Grand Prix which not have been part of the officially agenda, and so not bringing points for constructors' title or drivers' titles. But of course, it was good for marketing in the country, and also drivers had the opportunity to earn extra money. As 1960s, it wasn't like today, where we had these millions of dollars of salaries, at least for the star drivers. It should have been the first Formula One race on the complete new Mexican racetrack, and Ricardo Rodríguez felt the pride and perceived the pressure to participate. He received the approval by Enzo Ferrari to look for a temporary ride and received Rob Walker's offer to drive with one of his team's Lotus 24. At the first practice, the car's right suspension failed and Rodriguez had been instantly killed at the barriers. Chapter 6: Gary Hocking. Grand Prix motorcycle racing world champion Gary Hocking was profoundly impacted by the fatal accident of Tom Phillips during the 1962 Isle of Man race. Following his victory at that event, Hocking decided to transition from motorcycling racing to Formula One, which had been perceived as less dangerous than motorcycle racing. So a little bit a similar case as with Mike Hawthorn, that he was highly impacted by the death of a friend, and that's why he decided not to retire like Horton, but switch from motorcycling to Formula One. Hocking made his Formula One debut in a non-official championship race at Kyalami, South Africa, driving a Lotus Climax for the Rob Walker team. This was December 15. On December 22, Gary Hocking tragically lost his life in an accident during the non-championship South African Formula One Grand Prix of Natal. He was scheduled to make his official Formula One World Championship debut on December 29 at the official South African Grand Prix, but unfortunately it never came to this. Chapter 7: The End. In 1971, the Rob Walker Racing Formula One team merged with Surtees. Due to this, Walker could use the Bond Oxo sponsorship package to support the career of Mike Hellwood. From 1967 to 1990, Rob Walker wrote race reports and annual reviews for the Road and Track magazine, as he was a highly appreciated gentleman and expert. Rob Walker died in the age of 84 in 22. On the right, you see the Surtees car with the rests of Rob Walker livery, so to say, a stripe more bold than originally, but still dark blue and white. Okay, that's a little bit a different chapter. We still want to discuss maybe a little bit, was it a coincidence, him being near to the death of various people, or had he somehow caused it? I mean, even if legally he never have been held responsible for these deaths, I mean, there are many indicators, and this only came to light much later after the accident with Mike Hawthorn, that the two had been racing on public roads, which is deviation, of course, to British British traffic regulations. And here nowadays, as we still have the problems with illegal street races, people can go to prison. So we may say there is, if it was as we think it was, and again, it's a speculation, we may say here is some kind of ethical responsibility. Also, we discuss it various times in our data-driven F1 episodes, that the Lotus cars had the philosophy of having maximum minimum weight, and due to this, the stability was not that good as with other cars. And drivers, as Jochen Rindt, for example, said, with this car, the Lotus, I will become champion or I will die. Most tragically, both happened, as he became posthum champion with the Lotus, as he died before the last race of the season. But nevertheless, he had more points accumulated than the second, so he became a posthum champion. And also other drivers, as Mario Andretti, concluded that this car was highly unsafe to drive. So if you are using Lotus car, you may say that you had somehow accepting the risk of accidents, including fatal accidents. So yes, there had been accidents, uh, but let's say if you're using Lotus as a customer, also here you may ask yourself, am I responsible for these deaths? Yes or no? And this, to answer this question, I will leave up to you, as it's the end of our episode. I hope, even if it's a serious topic, you enjoyed it. If yes, please subscribe to our podcast, like this episode. This would be highly appreciated. We again, our video version is available on YouTube, YouTube Music, and Spotify. On all other platforms, we are here with the audio only version. If you are into music, please check out the mixtape Data Driven F1. Find it on Spotify. And I can tell you, speaking about Lotus, there's also one song, Say Roberto, about Lotus. And this, of course, related to Emerson Fittipaldi winning the championship is the Lotus car. Okay, but this is really all for now. Hope to see you later. Maybe the next episode will be directly again with Kanna Pogrevna. So see you. Bye bye.